Medici. The Medici family transformed Florence from a prosperous city-state into the beating heart of the Renaissance, fundamentally altering the course of Western civilization. Their story begins in the 13th century, with humble origins in the Tuscan countryside, but it was Cosimo de' Medici in the 15th century who truly established the family's dominance. Through shrewd banking practices and strategic political maneuvering, Cosimo built a financial empire that extended across Europe, with branches in Rome, Venice, Geneva, Lyon, and London. What set the Medicis apart wasn't just their wealth, but how they chose to use it. They became the most influential patrons of the arts the world has ever known. Cosimo's grandson, Lorenzo the Magnificent, embodied this patronage philosophy perfectly. He personally mentored Michelangelo, supported Botticelli, and created an environment where artistic genius could flourish. The family commissioned works that still define our understanding of beauty: Michelangelo's David, Botticelli's Birth of Venus, and Brunelleschi's Dome for the Florence Cathedral. Beyond art, the Medicis shaped political thought and governance. They produced 3 popes and 2 queens of France. Catherine de' Medici and Marie de' Medici both married French kings and wielded enormous influence over European politics during the 16th and 17th centuries. Their banking innovations, including the use of letters of credit and double-entry bookkeeping, laid the groundwork for modern financial systems. The Medici legacy reminds us that wealth directed toward culture and learning can echo through centuries. Rothschild. No family name has become more synonymous with banking and finance than Rothschild. Mayer Amschel Rothschild started as a coin dealer in the Frankfurt ghetto during the 18th century, but his vision extended far beyond those confining walls. His masterstroke was sending his 5 sons to establish banking houses in 5 different European capitals: Frankfurt, London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples. This created an unprecedented financial network that could move money and information faster than any competitor. The Rothschilds financed governments during the Napoleonic Wars, funded the British purchase of the Suez Canal, and helped finance the construction of railroads across Europe. Nathan Rothschild in London became so powerful that his assessment of government bonds could determine their value across the continent. The family's ability to communicate through their own courier system meant they often knew about major political events before government officials did. Legend has it that Nathan learned of Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo a full day before the British government. Their influence extended beyond finance into social reform and philanthropy. Members of the family funded hospitals, libraries, and educational institutions. They championed Jewish emancipation across Europe and supported the establishment of Israel. The Rothschild name also became attached to magnificent estates, wine production, and art collecting. Their collection helped establish what would become major museums. Despite persistent conspiracy theories that exaggerate their power, the Rothschild family's actual historical impact on modern banking, international finance, and philanthropy remains genuinely extraordinary. Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller didn't just become the richest person in modern history. He essentially created the template for the modern corporation and then pioneered systematic philanthropy on an unprecedented scale. Starting with a single oil refinery in Cleveland in 1863, Rockefeller built Standard Oil into a company that controlled 90% of America's oil refining capacity by the 1880s. His business practices were ruthless and often controversial, leading to antitrust legislation that eventually broke up his company. But the breakup only made Rockefeller wealthier, as the individual companies became more valuable than the whole. What makes the Rockefeller impact truly lasting, however, is what he did with that wealth. He essentially invented modern philanthropy as we know it. Rather than random acts of charity, he applied business principles to giving, focusing on root causes rather than symptoms. The Rockefeller Foundation, established in 1913, attacked problems systematically, funding medical research that led to vaccines for yellow fever and other diseases, supporting the Green Revolution that increased food production globally, and establishing universities and research institutions. The family's subsequent generations continued this tradition. John D. Rockefeller Jr. purchased the land that would become the United Nations headquarters in New York. Nelson Rockefeller served as Vice President of the United States. The Rockefeller name is attached to Rockefeller Center, the Rockefeller University, and countless institutions worldwide. Their model of strategic philanthropy influenced Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and virtually every major donor who came after them. The Rockefellers proved that accumulated wealth could be systematically redirected to benefit humanity. Habsburg. For over 600 years, from the 13th century until 1918, the Habsburg family ruled over vast territories, making them arguably the most successful dynasty in European history. Through strategic marriages, rather than warfare captured in their motto, "Let others wage war, you, happy Austria, marry," they accumulated an empire that at its peak included Spain, Austria, Hungary, Bohemia, the Netherlands, parts of Italy, and vast territories in the Americas. Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor in the 16th century, ruled over an empire where the sun never set, controlling territories across Europe and the New World simultaneously. The Habsburgs shaped European politics, culture, and religion for centuries. They were key players in the Counter-Reformation, defending Catholicism against Protestant movements. Their patronage supported composers like Mozart and Haydn, and their palaces, particularly Schönbrunn and the Hofburg in Vienna, became centers of European culture. The family's famous genetic legacy, the distinctive Habsburg jaw resulting from generations of intermarriage, eventually weakened their line, but their political legacy remained powerful until the First World War. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, a Habsburg, triggered that war. When the empire finally dissolved in 1918, it had shaped the boundaries, cultures, and conflicts of Central Europe in ways that still resonate today. The Habsburg story demonstrates how a single family, through centuries of strategic positioning, can fundamentally shape the political geography of an entire continent. Kennedy. The Kennedy family represents the American dream and its complications in a single, tragic narrative. Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. built a fortune through banking, stock trading, and Hollywood film production during the early 20th century. His ambitions for his sons, particularly his drive to see them achieve political greatness, shaped American politics for generations. Despite facing discrimination as Irish Catholics, the Kennedys broke through America's Protestant establishment. John F. Kennedy became the youngest elected president and the first Catholic to hold the office in 1960. His presidency, though cut short by assassination in 1963, transformed American politics and culture. He inspired a generation with his call to public service, challenged America to reach the moon, navigated the Cuban Missile Crisis, and began laying groundwork for civil rights legislation. His brother, Robert Kennedy, served as Attorney General and championed civil rights before his own assassination in 1968 while running for president. Ted Kennedy, the youngest brother, served in the Senate for 47 years, becoming one of the most effective legislators in American history, particularly on healthcare and civil rights. The next generation continued in public service. John F. Kennedy Jr. captured public imagination before his tragic death, while members like Joseph Kennedy Jr. and Kathleen Kennedy Townsend have served in various capacities. The Kennedy legacy encompasses both achievement and tragedy, glamour and substance, inspiring millions while demonstrating the personal costs of public life. Their impact on American political culture, their advancement of civil rights, and their call to public service continue influencing American life decades later. Nehru-Gandhi. The Nehru-Gandhi family has governed India for approximately 40 of its 77 years of independence, making them one of the most politically influential families of the 20th century. Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first prime minister, wasn't just a political leader but a visionary who shaped modern India's democratic institutions, secular character, and non-aligned foreign policy. Serving from 1947 until his death in 1964, Nehru established the template for Indian democracy. His daughter, Indira Gandhi, no relation to Mahatma Gandhi, served as prime minister for 16 years across two periods. She led India through the 1971 war that created Bangladesh, implemented the controversial emergency period that temporarily suspended democracy, and was assassinated by her own bodyguards in 1984. Her son, Rajiv Gandhi, then became prime minister, modernizing India's economy and technology sector before his assassination in 1991. Rajiv's widow, Sonia Gandhi, though born in Italy, led the Congress Party to victory in 2004, but declined to become prime minister herself, instead wielding power behind the scenes. Her son Rahul and daughter Priyanka have continued the family's political involvement. The family has shaped India's development trajectory, its approach to secularism, its economic policies, and its international relations. They've also embodied the contradictions of Indian democracy: dynasty versus meritocracy, privilege versus service, power versus responsibility. Their impact on the world's largest democracy cannot be overstated. Bush. The Bush family created a political dynasty that has shaped American and global politics since the mid-20th century. Prescott Bush served as a U.S. Senator, establishing the family's political credentials. His son, George H.W. Bush, had one of the most distinguished careers in American public service: congressman, ambassador to the United Nations, director of the CIA, vice president for 8 years, and finally president from 1989 to 1993. George H.W. Bush's presidency coincided with the end of the Cold War, and his careful management of the Soviet Union's collapse helped ensure it remained largely peaceful. He assembled an international coalition for the Gulf War in 1991, demonstrating American leadership in the post-Cold War era. His approach to foreign policy emphasized diplomacy, coalition building, and pragmatism over ideology. His son, George W. Bush, served as president from 2001 to 2009, presiding over America's response to the September 11th terrorist attacks. His decisions to invade Afghanistan and Iraq reshaped Middle Eastern politics and American foreign policy for decades. His brother Jeb Bush served as governor of Florida, and various family members have continued in public service and diplomacy. The Bush family represents a particular strand of American conservatism: internationalist, pragmatic, and committed to public service. Their influence on American foreign policy, particularly regarding the Middle East, continues to shape global politics today. Walton. The Walton family might seem out of place among ancient dynasties and political families, but their impact on how humans live, shop, and work globally is undeniable. Sam Walton opened his first Walmart store in 1962 in Rogers, Arkansas, with a simple philosophy: offer the lowest possible prices by operating with ruthless efficiency and enormous scale. This approach transformed retail forever. Today, Walmart is the world's largest company by revenue and the largest private employer globally, with over 2 million employees. The Walton family's combined wealth makes them one of the richest families in history, but their impact extends far beyond wealth. Walmart pioneered supply chain management techniques that became industry standards, forced manufacturers to lower costs and increase efficiency, and fundamentally changed how products move from factories to consumers. The company's influence on small-town America has been profound and controversial. Walmart stores provided affordable goods to rural areas, but often destroyed local businesses. Their employment practices have drawn criticism, yet they provide jobs in areas with few alternatives. The Walton family's philanthropic efforts, particularly in education reform through the Walton Family Foundation, have influenced educational policy across America. Whether viewed positively or negatively, the Waltons have shaped modern consumer culture, global supply chains, and the nature of retail work more than perhaps any family in history. Their story demonstrates how commercial innovation can have impacts as profound as political power. Ptolemy. The Ptolemaic dynasty ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years, following Alexander the Great's death, creating a unique fusion of Greek and Egyptian culture that influenced the ancient world. Founded by Ptolemy, one of Alexander's generals, in 305 BCE, this family turned Egypt into a center of learning, commerce, and culture that rivaled anything in the ancient world. The Library of Alexandria, established under the early Ptolemies, became the greatest repository of knowledge in the ancient world, containing hundreds of thousands of scrolls. Scholars from across the Mediterranean came to study there, advancing mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. The Pharos Lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, symbolized Alexandria's prominence as a center of trade and culture. The Ptolemies adopted Egyptian royal customs, including sibling marriage, to legitimize their rule. They portrayed themselves as pharaohs to the Egyptians, while remaining Greek in culture and language. Cleopatra VII, the last Ptolemaic ruler, became one of history's most famous figures. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony involved Egypt and Roman power struggles, ultimately leading to Egypt's absorption into the Roman Empire in 30 BCE. The Ptolemies' patronage of learning, Their cultural synthesis and their diplomatic sophistication made Alexandria the intellectual capital of the ancient world, preserving and advancing knowledge that would eventually fuel the Renaissance centuries later. Ming. The Ming dynasty ruled China from 1368 to 1644, overseeing a period of tremendous cultural achievement, economic growth, and international engagement. Founded by Zhu Yuanzhang, a former peasant and Buddhist monk who drove out Mongol rulers, the Ming restored Chinese rule and created a powerful centralized state that would influence Chinese governance for centuries. The early Ming emperors, particularly the Yongle Emperor, launched massive construction projects, including the Forbidden City in Beijing, which remains one of the world's most magnificent palace complexes. The Yongle Emperor also sponsored the treasure voyages of Admiral Zheng He between 1405 and 1433. These maritime expeditions reached as far as East Africa, with fleets that dwarfed anything Europe would produce for another century, demonstrating Chinese technological and organizational superiority. The Ming period saw advances in technology, literature, and arts. Ming porcelain became prized across the world, establishing China as synonymous with fine ceramics. The dynasty compiled massive encyclopedias, created sophisticated irrigation systems, and built portions of the Great Wall that tourists visit today. Ming novels like Journey to the West remain cultural touchstones. The dynasty's eventual decline came from internal corruption, external pressure from Manchu invaders, and peasant rebellions. But their cultural achievements, administrative systems, and architectural legacy defined Chinese civilization and influenced East Asia for centuries. The Ming demonstrate how a single dynasty can set cultural standards that persist long after its political power ends. Borgia. The Borgia family epitomizes Renaissance Italy's blend of culture, corruption, religion, and power politics. Originally from Spain, they rose to prominence when Alphonse de Borgia became Pope Calixtus III in 1455. But it was his nephew Rodrigo Borgia who became Pope Alexander VI in 1492, who made the family name infamous. Alexander VI had multiple children despite his clerical vows, most notably Cesare and Lucrezia Borgia. Cesare became the model for Machiavelli's The Prince, using cunning, force, and strategic brilliance to carve out a state in central Italy. He was handsome, charismatic, ruthless, and effective, everything Machiavelli believed a ruler needed to be. Lucrezia, often unfairly portrayed as a poisoner and seductress, was actually a capable administrator who governed papal territories competently. The Borgias exemplified how the Renaissance papacy had become a political office as much as a religious one. They commissioned works from great artists, engaged in complex diplomatic machinations, and pursued power with single-minded intensity. Their legacy includes spectacular scandals, murdered rivals, and allegations of incest and poisoning, some true, many exaggerated by enemies. But they also represented an era when the church was deeply intertwined with temporal power, when art and corruption coexisted, when religious office could be used for dynastic ambition. The Borgia story reveals the complex reality of Renaissance politics and the Catholic Church's worldly power before the Reformation. Julio-Claudian. The Julio-Claudian dynasty provided Rome's first 5 emperors, transforming the Roman Republic into an empire and establishing the template for imperial rule that would last centuries. Augustus, the first emperor, ruled from 27 BCE to 14 CE, creating a system that maintained republican forms while concentrating real power in one person's hands. His political genius lay in appearing to restore the republic while actually creating monarchy. Augustus brought peace after decades of civil war, reformed administration, patronized arts and literature, and expanded Roman territory. His reign, called the Pax Romana, began 2 centuries of relative peace and prosperity. Subsequent Julio-Claudian emperors Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero ranged from competent to disastrous, but all operated within the system Augustus created. Tiberius proved a capable, if unpopular, ruler. Caligula's brief reign descended into alleged madness and cruelty. Claudius, despite physical disabilities, conquered Britain and proved surprisingly effective. Nero combined artistic pretensions with murderous paranoia, ultimately committing suicide when the military turned against him in 68 CE. The dynasty ended with Nero, but their impact continued. They established emperor worship, expanded Roman citizenship, built spectacular monuments, including much of the Roman Forum, and created administrative systems that governed an empire stretching from Britain to Egypt. The Julio-Claudian legacy includes both the grandeur of imperial Rome and the dangers of absolute power. Plantagenet. The Plantagenet dynasty ruled England for over 300 years, from 1154 to 1485, fundamentally shaping English law, government, and culture. The name comes from the Latin planta genista, referring to the broom plant Geoffrey of Anjou wore in his cap. His son became Henry II of England, establishing a dynasty that would dominate English and much of French territory. The Plantagenets gave us some of English history's most dramatic figures. Henry II reformed English law, creating legal systems that influence common law to this day. His conflict with Thomas Becket over church authority remains legendary. Richard the Lionheart embodied chivalric ideals while spending most of his reign outside England on crusade. John's misrule led to the Magna Carta in 1215, establishing principles of limited government that echo in democratic systems worldwide. Edward I conquered Wales and attempted to conquer Scotland, earning the title Hammer of the Scots. Edward III's claim to the French throne began the 100 Years' War. The dynasty split into Lancaster and York branches, leading to the Wars of the Roses that finally ended with Richard III's death at Bosworth Field in 1485. The Plantagenets created the English Parliament, developed common law principles, expanded English territory, patronized Gothic architecture visible in magnificent cathedrals, and established England as a major European power. Their legacy includes fundamental principles of English-speaking law and government worldwide. Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt family built their fortune in the transportation revolution that transformed 19th century America, then set new standards for both conspicuous consumption and strategic philanthropy. Cornelius Vanderbilt, born in 1794 to a poor family on Staten Island, built a ferry business into a steamship empire, then dominated railroad development during the Gilded Age. At his death in 1877, he was the richest man in America. His descendants expanded the fortune and became symbols of Gilded Age excess. They built spectacular mansions in New York and Newport that still astonish visitors with their opulence. The Breakers, Marble House, and Biltmore Estate represent an era of unparalleled wealth concentration. Alva Vanderbilt became a society leader and suffragette. Consuelo Vanderbilt married the Duke of Marlborough in a transaction that exemplified how American wealth and European titles merged. But the Vanderbilts also pioneered modern philanthropy. Cornelius's endowment founded Vanderbilt University in Nashville, which became a major research institution. Family members supported arts, education, and culture. Gloria Vanderbilt became a fashion icon and artist in the 20th century. Her son, Anderson Cooper, continued the family's public presence as a journalist. The Vanderbilt story demonstrates how industrial fortunes built during periods of rapid technological change can create lasting institutions through strategic philanthropy. Their mansions remain tourist attractions, their university continues educating students, and their name symbolizes an era when individual fortunes could reshape American infrastructure and culture. Gupta. The Gupta dynasty ruled northern India from approximately 320 to 550 CE, creating what historians call India's Golden Age. Under their rule, Indian civilization reached heights in science, mathematics, astronomy, art, literature, and philosophy that influenced cultures across Asia and eventually the world. The Guptas provided political stability that allowed culture to flourish. Scholars at Gupta courts made revolutionary advances. Aryabhata calculated pi accurately and proposed that the Earth rotates on its axis. Indian mathematicians developed the decimal system and the concept of zero innovations that would eventually revolutionize mathematics worldwide. Sanskrit literature flourished, with Kalidasa's plays and poems becoming classics that influenced Asian literature for centuries. The Gupta period saw Buddhist and Hindu art reach extraordinary levels of sophistication, visible in temple sculptures and cave paintings at Ajanta. Medicine advanced, with Gupta-era physicians performing sophisticated surgeries and developing treatments still studied today. The Gupta University at Nalanda attracted students from across Asia, becoming one of the world's first great universities. When the Gupta dynasty declined in the 6th century, their cultural achievements spread throughout Southeast Asia, influencing civilizations from Indonesia to Cambodia. The Gupta legacy demonstrates how political stability combined with patronage of learning can create cultural golden ages whose influence extends far beyond their geographic and temporal boundaries. Their mathematical innovations alone justify calling them one of history's most impactful dynasties. Thank you for watching. If you learned anything, let me know by liking the video and comment below on what you would like to see in the future. History never runs out of surprises, and neither do we, so subscribe and join me for the next dive into the archives.